So you get called with this request and you say yes. And then you head to Washington, D.C. And can you tell me about the organization of that event and seeing people come together for the Earth?
Well, sure. Ironically, it turns out that what I was hired to do proved to be impossible. There was almost, not only was there nothing going on at Harvard or at MIT or Boston University or Boston College, there's nothing going on almost any place. And I hired a group of just stellar organizers to fan out across the country. And they had just enormous difficulty getting any of the people who were involved in activism on college campuses interested in this environmental issue. It was still the era of anti-war and civil rights and the beginnings of feminism, but the environment wasn't really on students' radar. And so at that point, I prowled through the mail that had accumulated, and it was dominated by by young women who were, for the most part, married, for the most part in single-earner families with young children. And they hadn't been much involved in any of the previous movements, sometimes because they were afraid it might imperil their husband's job prospects. But this genuinely resonated with them, and so we had this huge array of talent that we were able to tap into. So what we did was, instead of calling it an environmental teach-in, and maybe my biggest contribution of my life was to choose the new name Earth Day, take it off of college campuses, move it up into cities, and literally into, I think, pretty much every city, every town, every village, every crossroads in the United States had something going on. And in the biggest of them, something spectacular going on. In New York City, where the mayor shut down Fifth Avenue and gave us the great lawn of Central Park, we had more than 1 million people. It was the largest single demonstration at that point in the history of the city. So and the elements of organizing were very straightforward. We went out to, there was no internet, obviously, and we didn't have money for a lot of telephone calls. We had one 800 number that we could use for the entire staff.
Wow.
So communicating with people was a matter of mimeographing things, and we had something called an addressograph machine, which is you typed in people's addresses on metal plates and then ran envelopes through this machine one at a time, pumping them out, and then had volunteers stuffing the mimeograph things into the envelopes. You stamp them and you send it out, and a week later somebody would get the message, and a week after that we get a reply. It was a very different style of organizing than you use today. But in order to build it, we needed to move to broadcasting. So that meant to identify every group in America that we could that would be interested in something like this, and getting a message out into the magazines and trade publications that serve them. So went after the American Education Association and the National Science Teachers Association to get K-12 kids. We went after the Boy Scouts. We went after all kinds of professional organizations of physicians and attorneys and what have you, and hit all of those, and had just enormous success in placing articles in their publications and getting at the end of the article our street address and our telephone number, and people who were interested then sought us out, and at that point we built them into an organization.
When you're in front of millions of people and you feel the energy there, what does that feel like? Did that inspire you? Did it motivate you? Did it make you think that we have a chance here of making a difference and an impact? Did you feel the energy at an event like that?
Ironically, I don't much like crowds. I'm sort of most known for putting together big events.
And not being there?
No, I show up, but there are so many things that can go wrong, even before the age of terrorism, the age of accidents. However, that first Earth Day, in particular the one in New York, my first Earth Day, I began with a sunrise ceremony on the Mall in Washington, D.C. with a group of Native Americans welcoming the sun. Flew up to New York for this event, then flew out to Chicago for another event in the Mall, and flew back to Washington, D.C. I had quite a carbon footprint that first Earth Day, actually.
Was that all in one day you
did that?
Yes,
that was all in on Wednesday, April 22nd, and closed off the night on national public television. So climbing the stage in New York, I'm guessing it was 60 feet, 65 feet high. And you're looking out over the people, and it's like being on a cliff looking at the ocean. There were people out further than you could see from the elevation of the stage. And the idea of, giving a talk to 30 people it can be intimidating.
Right.
Giving a talk to 1 million people is just a totally different phenomenon. Certainly an unprecedented experience in my life. And you're right, it was hopeful in the sense that a mere 4 or 5 months earlier, when there was at that point very little interest among young people and not much interest upon practical politicians, people who had organized anything. It was really this young batch of women across the country that had resonated with the issue. Climbing up on that stage and seeing that diverse sea of humanity, I began to realize that we'd uncorked a genie here that was far bigger than any of us had anticipated was possible earlier.
Wonderful. I wish I'd been there, but I have been here for a lot of Earth
You
Day.
probably weren't even born then.
I was not. I was a twinkle in someone's eye. Thank you so much for watching this interview today. Don't forget to subscribe on the left side column of my website. You can enter your email address and you'll get a notification every time I post a new interview. Just a Girl in Camas is a 501c3. Your donation helps me support our community and bring us together with these awesome interviews. Thank you so much, and I'll see you around town.